Welcome, everybody. I'm tremendously excited to announce through Grind City Media, Cageside with John Morgan is now having this awesome new video podcast. I'm your host, Eric McMahon. I know you guys aren't here to listen to me, so let me bring in my esteemed colleague. He is the man. He covers every single UFC, Bellator, big-time events, best journalist in all of MMA, John Morgan. John, first off, thank you for agreeing to take part in this podcast with us.
Nah, man, I'm enjoying it. What a cool platform, you know what I mean? And just an entirely new audience, perhaps. Hopefully we got some hardcore MMA fans, but hopefully maybe we can introduce some new people as well, man. I honestly think, no defense to basketball, but I think this is the greatest sport on earth, man. I think people need to learn about it.
Hey, if it's not the greatest sport, it's definitely the fastest growing. And I think that's why Grind City Media, to give everybody a backstory who might not know Grind City Media, it's a subsidiary company of the Memphis Grizzlies. We cover all sports. And now, finally, we are diving into combat sports, mixed martial arts specific. So that's really cool. So first of all, I know who you are. The MMA diehards know who you are. Please just give us a little background about yourself, how you're in this MMA world, and how you've kind of risen through the ranks in it.
Oh, man, it's been a lifetime. We're going on 15, 16 years of doing this, so it's an absolute passion. If you ever tune into a UFC broadcast and you see a dude Cageside with a blue shirt, that's me right there. I do that for my son so that he can find me on TV when I'm out of town. But, yeah, listen, been covering this game for a long time. Just really love the sport, to be honest with you. I just, in the early days when it was a bit of a wild, wild west, kind of took a liking to it and, realized at some point in my life I probably wasn't going to be a pro athlete, but I still wanted to be involved in professional sports. And, to me, MMA was the way to do it. And it was a big part of basically the growth of a website in the space called MMA Junkie, a leading site there. I just left in March to go run mixedmartialarts.com. What a lot of people know is the Underground. It was an online forum years and years ago. So listen,
best fight finder in the game, by the way.
That's what's up. So listen, that's what we're doing now. We got an affiliation with Sports Illustrated as well. So just still covering the game, as you said. The UFC, of course, the leading brand, but Bellator, One Championship, PFL. We cover it all because, listen, there's great fighters all over the globe, man. There's great fighters in organizations everywhere. So, just something I've committed my life to, man. Been doing this, covering this beat for like 16 years full time. It's what I live and breathe every single day, all day, every day, and I enjoy the heck out of it, man.
First of all, I love it. That's how I first got introduced to you is through, MMA Junkie, which used to be my go-to literally for everything. Back in the day, even in college, I was going on to Junkie, and that's where I got all my fight news. And it was through reputable journalists like yourself that really brought us like up to date, current, real information, which I think is very, very important in this game. Just to give everybody a backstory on me, my name is Eric McMahon. I work for the Memphis Grizzlies. I also work for Grind City Media. First off, started as a huge MMA fan, and then I eventually got into training, right? And so once you get into training, why build a sword unless you're going to see how sharp it is? Right. So then I was like, hey, you know what? I'm going to do a fight. I did one fight. And then I said, guess what? I didn't get out of it what I thought I was going to get out of it. I did win, but it was pretty fast finish. So I did another fight. And then my wife put the kibosh to that really, really quick. But I think I really understand the fight game. I've done pretty much everything in this fight game. Now, when I say I fought, like, let's be honest here, like the level of competition, my 2-0 stands is like they have less than ideal abilities, right? So it was very creative matchmaking, but that's how this game goes sometimes, especially in the amateur ranks. You don't know where anybody stands. I could have went against the next Usman, or I could have went against the guy who probably couldn't finish the 40-yard dash, which I did. So I just got lucky there, I guess.
Hey, but I respect it. You got in there and did it. To me, I actually trained years and years ago when I was, in my late teens, early 20s. But to be honest with you, and I think it's one reason I have so much respect for everybody that does it is that at the time I was supporting myself. I was waiting tables to pay the bills. And I was like, man, if I go out there and have a fight and somebody tweaks my elbow in an arm bar, tweak my knee or something like that, I'm not going to be able to support myself. So I never took that step. But to be honest with you, I think it's colored why I have so much respect for the athletes that do it, because it is a sacrifice, man. And it's a physical thing and it's a mental thing as well to get in there and do it. So, hey, man, you did it twice. You deserve respect for that.
Yeah, and I always say that the mental part of it is way harder than the physical. At least it was for me, right? Because physical pain is easy to a degree. The mental anguish is always the hard part. That's why you see fighters no showing weigh-ins, no showing fights, pulling out, because that mental anguish is so hard. It's not like you just met up in a parking lot and you got into a random fight. It didn't just happen. You sign on a dotted line, even in the amateur ranks, you sign on the dotted line 6 weeks, 2 months in advance. You have to think about it every single night. Am I going to get hurt? Am I going to get knocked out in front of my friends, my family, my girlfriend, my wife, my kids? I mean, that takes a toll mentally. So eventually with my wife saying, no more to that. Like, I then really just transferred into the jiu-jitsu world where I'm a brown belt in jiu-jitsu. Actually going next weekend, I'm going to be competing in the World Masters tournament. I've competed in that every year. I'm a blue belt world champion, no-gi, as well as, you know, a lot of other tournaments. I won IBJJF PANS last year as a purple belt, which is pretty cool. Now I'm in the brown belt division. Let's see how I fare. You know what I mean?
You got to, man. You got to go out there. It's great. Look, the grappling world is really growing. To be honest, if you don't want to go all the way to, you know, a full contact mixed martial arts bout, a lot of people are really kind of picking up the grappling. Obviously, Fury Professional Grappling, a group that I do commentary for, we're using UFC athletes in some of our featured bouts and stuff, which is super cool to see. Next weekend, of course, it's going to be Clay Guida versus Alex Caceres in the main event. I mean, so, you know, a Hall of Famer and a well-known, you know, superstar. So it's fun to do, man. But no, listen, you know, you touch on that mental side of it. It's such a crazy thing about this sport, man. You know, I always say this about it, and it's the truth and it's wild. You take anybody on the roster of the UFC and you take them into a crowded environment and things go bad, they're going to clear out the room real quick without a second thought. But it's that, as you said, you put your name on the contract and you're thinking about that one person all day, every day. You know, what are they doing in the gym today? What are they? I want to have a little cheat meal, but is my opponent doing a cheat? I mean, it's such a mental thing. That's a big side of this game, man, that I think a lot of people, when you first get into it, you might not understand. But as the more and more familiar you get with the sport, you really see the mental challenge of the sport and what it offers. And it's just another thing that makes it amazing, I think.
Yeah, and just to compound on that point really quick, before we kind of get into the preview show that we got launching here, is I'm going to take that one step further about that laying in bed. Like, you know, a lot of people lay in bed after a busy day and they can't turn their brain off. And then they're like, well, if I go to sleep now, I get 6 hours of sleep. If I go to sleep right now, I get 5 or 4 or 3 hours, and you just can't turn your brain off. Imagine these fighters doing it. And it happened to me on the lowest of low levels. And I can't even imagine what it's like there. Is every single night, to your point, did he eat better than me? Did he train harder than me? And then we're not even getting into the fear side of things, because everybody has fear, whether they want to believe, whether they say it or not, whether they're going to admit it to the world, there's an element of fear. And if that fear is just even not succeeding, not even getting hurt, it may not just living up to the full potential. It just does not allow you to turn your brain off at night. And to your point, outside of this sport, I can't think of any athletes that I respect more, because it's not what people think. This is such a strategic sport, and they're only doing this to be the best in the world. And so it's that Mamba mentality. These athletes, unlike anybody else, strive for greatness more than any other sport. And I just think it's remarkable.
It is. I mean, it's what I love about it, and it's what I love about the athletes involved in it. And to be honest with you, I think it's one of the reasons the athletes in it are so humble, man. They're so accessible and they're so humble because, listen, what they do is they go out there and they put everything on the line. And when you win, it's a cliche, but it's true. It's the highest of highs and it's the lowest of lows, man. When you win a fight, it's the greatest thing on earth. When you lose a fight, you know, when you get your butt kicked in front of your friends and your family and thousands of people potentially, depending on what, you know, level that you're competing at, it's a humbling experience, man. To me, it's what makes these athletes so fantastic, so phenomenal.
Well, awesome. Well, with this new show, really what we're going to focus on here, John, is, you know, kind of recapping and previewing, right? And we're talking all things MMA, all things grappling, all things combat sports, and, you know, who better to talk to about you? So let's just dive right in. We're going to preview. Let's preview what we're going to talk about. Just coming off of UFC 278. Like, if we're not going to talk about a greater come from behind victory of all time, I've even heard people say greatest upset of all time. No, let's reserve that for Matt Serra, GSP, right? But this is clearly, in my opinion, the greatest come from behind high stakes victory of all time. You were there in your blue shirt. Just take us through that experience.
Yeah, man, it was pretty phenomenal. First of all, shout out to Salt Lake City, man. The fans in Utah were phenomenal, man. It was a great environment all week. I mean, fight night, they brought it big time. But Yeah, you know, it was a great fight. And listen, going in, we knew Leon Edwards was the underdog, right? Kamaru Usman, #1 pound for pound on the planet. Leon Edwards, a dangerous guy, a driven guy, a rematch 7 years in the making. So, I mean, he had been thinking about this moment, developing his game for this moment. And there it was. Comes out opening round, gets a takedown, ends up in mount, ends up on the back. And you're like, oh my goodness, maybe we got something special. Maybe there is a little magic in the air. And then rounds 2, 3, and 4, Kamaru Usman did what he does, man. Starts to fight a little bit more technical, really control the space, control the range. I actually was winning the striking exchanges, which if you know Kamaru Usman, you're thinking more of a grappler, but I thought he was looking great on the feet as well. And you're going into round 5, and here you go. It's just more of the same. And at that point, you know, you're just watching the clock tick down. You're like, well, Usman did it again. I mean, he was set to tie Anderson Silva's record as the most wins ever, 16 straight wins in the octagon. And then a high kick changes everything. Leon Edwards lands clean with the left high kick. Kamaru Usman is out, and it was just such a spectacular moment. And I agree in terms of, you know, greatest upset of all time. I still do believe that's Matt Serra versus George St. Pierre. But in terms of an upset, I mean, this championship moment, this come from behind moment, this spectacular unforeseen moment. I mean, it's up there among the greatest of all time. And you know, another one that stands out to me is Anderson Silva himself, actually, with the comeback against Chael Sonnen after he had been losing that entire fight. But in that one, it was the all-time great who rallied to do what you thought he was going to do going in. This was the opposite side of that, right? This was the underdog who a lot of people were giving no chance whatsoever, who, you know, is getting beat and finds this spectacular moment within themselves. And it was incredible. And the emotion that Leon Edwards showed afterwards. And I mean, just everything about it was spectacular. It will go down as one of the greatest moments in UFC history. There's absolutely no question about that. It is a moment in time that will never be forgotten. And, you know, I don't know how long Leon Edwards' reign is going to be. You know, it looks like there'll be an immediate rematch, which would certainly be the trilogy, actually.
Talking about Wembley already.
Yeah. And I think it'll happen in England. And listen, I've already seen some odds makers who have already opened some lines with Usman as the favorite. And I understand that. I think, to be honest, in my head right now, if I'm picking the fight again, I'm probably picking Usman again. So, I mean, you know, Edwards' fight, his reign as a champion, maybe one fight. And I'm not trying to take anything away from him right now. I'm just saying it's a possibility. Maybe it's only one fight. But you know what? It doesn't matter. It's part of history. It's one of the most spectacular moments in UFC history, one of the most improbable moments in UFC history. And it was incredible to see on Saturday night.
I think that aside from the pure spectacle of the knockout, the way the fight was going to where it eventually ended up, but what almost made it for me was all the little subplots that we had going on in this. I mean, you literally, to DC, Daniel Cormier's credit, he said we were writing his obituary. Right before that, Joe Rogan and Dean Thomas were both saying it is a moral victory for him just to see the final bell. To John Anakin's credit. Did you hear this on the broadcast?
I heard it.
It's not in his DNA. That is not the way he built. It's not a moral victory for him. Bam! Head kick, knockout. Literally on cue. Then you take all of that to his post-fight interview with Joe Rogan. I'm sitting there knowing a lot about Leon Edwards, but he's a quiet figure on the scene too. So I didn't know a lot about him in that regard. And I'm telling you, I still have chills right now thinking about, you know, look at me now. Look at me now. Every question that Joe Rogan asked him, he had a response and say, nobody gave me credit. Nobody gave me a chance. I came from a wood box with a tin roof. Look at me now. And it was just spectacular. You add all of that on top of how he rallied from behind to, you know, hide that kick behind the jab. To your point, it was one of the most, if not the most spectacular UFC moment I have ever seen. And you got to sit cage side for it.
Yeah, pretty amazing to see that close. I mean, it literally happened right in front of me. I mean, literally right in front of the position on press row. They were on that side of the cage as well, and I was watching it, and it was just unbelievable to watch it unfold. And to everything that you said, it's funny. You know, Leon Edwards, his nickname is Rocky, and once he got done with that speech, it was cool. DJ AL3, who's the UFC's DJ, he played the Rocky theme, and Leon scaled the cage once again and brought it all in. And you're right. And listen, man, that's what's so beautiful about the sport. As you said, he was born in Jamaica in poverty, moved to the UK. His father was killed. He started going down a bad street himself. His mom took him to martial arts training to just try to get him off the streets. And he took that and used it and became a world champion. And there's footage of him afterwards, FaceTiming his mom and saying, "Mom, I told you I was going to change our life," and the type of money that comes with winning a world championship. I mean, yes, it's about accomplishment. It's about personal goals and that sort of thing, but it's prize fighting. It comes with a prize as well, and that's a nice check. And when you get that UFC title as part of your contract, it comes with a lot of extra zeros in there as well.
When you get those buy points now too.
That's it. You get a little cut of the pay-per-view sales. Now you're a partner with the UFC. So, that is life-changing money. And he said, "Look, my mom, I told you I was going to change her life, and we did it." And it's just beautiful scenes. And like I said, the hard thing about being a champion, and that's what makes what Kamaru Usman had done so special. He had 5 title defenses. He had won 15 fights in a row. It's hard to do that. And once you get that target on your back, man, everybody's gunning for you. And listen, it's not going to be easy for him to stay there, but still, that never changes. That one night, and he said it, and I thought it was beautiful. He was holding that UFC world title and said, this belt doesn't belong to anybody. Like, it has to be earned, and he's going to have to go earn it again. Just because it's wrapped around his waist doesn't mean it's going to be any easier to keep the next time around. But nothing will ever change what happened on Saturday night. If for nothing else than one night, you get to wake up the next morning and say, "I am the best in the world at what I do." It's pretty incredible.
It was unbelievable, and social media has ran wild since then. Have you seen the where they put the Rocky music behind his corner man, just imploring him, "Let your hands go. Quit feeling effing sorry for yourself. Just let it go. I know you can do it. You can do this, Leon. You can do it, Rocky." And then, like, I've literally watched it probably 15 times.
It's incredible. So where we sit in media row is basically in the blue corner, which is the first corner to walk out. So on a championship fight, we'll always be in the challenger's corner. The champion is on the other side, and that's where Dana White and UFC execs and all that. But I could hear his corner. You know what I mean? Because the fight was kind of, listen, round 1 was incredible. As we said, 2, 3, and 4, Usman started to take over a little bit, and the crowd started to kind of settle a little bit because you're like, all right, well, we see what's going on here. Usman's in control. But in between round 4 and 5, I could hear his corner directly. So I got to hear all that live, man. And you got to hear that just imploring him to get busy, imploring him to do it. And you could see it, man. It was, in between rounds, kind of the body language. I understand why Daniel Cormier and Dean Thomas and Joe Rogan were writing the obituary. I understand it because you could see the body language. It was just frustration. The round would end, and, Leon would walk back to the corner just like, man, I know that one got away. And so I could hear that commentary of him live, of them imploring him to get busy, and to see it played out on social media. It's been pretty cool.
Yeah, it's been amazing. I made my wife watch that one smashed together with the Rocky music and the subtitles and my wife's like, "It's amazing, but it doesn't hit that Rocky music doesn't hit me like it hits you." And I'm like, it blew my mind. I'm like, how can Rocky music not hit you? But anyways, just an amazing night altogether. And I know this is a preview episode, so it's going to be a lot shorter. We can dive in deeper in future episodes, but I can't let us end this without talking about Luke Rockhold, Paulo Costa. If you're going to talk about a man going out on his shield, Luke Rockhold went out on his shield that night. Now, everybody knows that Luke Rockhold, former Strikeforce champion, former UFC champion, model. I mean, he's got everything going on, but he's got well-documented problems over the last few years that really brought him down. And for him to just throw it all on the line one last time and go out literally with a bang while screaming F you to his opponent and smearing his own blood all over the face, it was unbelievable. How electric was the crowd for that fight?
It was pretty incredible, to be honest with you, man. It was one of the wilder fights you can see, and I think part of it was just all of us expected that to be a one-round fight. I mean, you had 2 very dangerous guys in Costa and Rockhold, and you just thought it was going to be over early, and it wasn't. And listen, Rockhold, there's no question about it, man. He was exhausted, whether it was the altitude of Salt Lake City, whether it was the adrenaline dump, whether it was he hadn't been in there in 3 years, whatever it was. I mean, it was clear after round 1. He was exhausted, but the man refused to quit. He refused to break. He refused to go away. And he had said that going into the fight. He's like, listen, I've been caught. I've been knocked out, but I've never quit in a fight. And you'll never see that happen. And he proved it once again because he had every opportunity to quit. And Paulo Costa is a dangerous, scary dude, powerful right in front of him, throwing big shots, but Rockhold was throwing it right back. And, in the end, 30-27. So Paulo Costa takes every round, but an incredibly entertaining fight. It ends up getting the fight of the night bonus, and deservedly so, man. There was two warriors that left it out there. Rockhold afterwards said, listen, that's it for me. I'm done. I'm old. I've been doing this too long. And I get it. He had said coming in, I don't have to have this sport. I've got other things going on outside of it. I don't need to compete, but I want to come in here and do this again. And man, he did himself justice. It was a phenomenal fight. Listen, I know there's a lot of people there's some people that don't like Luke Rockhold. They think he's a little cocky. They don't necessarily like his attitude, but
usually their girlfriends have a crush on him to make people not like him even more. Like, let's be honest, he's a good-looking dude, man. He's got everything going for him.
That probably doesn't help either, But listen, man, if he didn't earn your respect that night, even look, I asked Paulo Costa afterwards, and Paulo had some bad things to say about him leading up to that fight. And I asked him in the post-fight press conference, like, did he earn your respect tonight? And Paulo said, he absolutely earned my respect tonight, man. He went out there and he did it. And I think anybody that was watching, there's no way you don't walk away that fight with respect for Luke Rockhold. If you didn't appreciate what he accomplished before, you have to appreciate at least his effort and his heart in that fight.
And I think it's really cool. When you see somebody who clearly has nothing left in the tank. It was clear after one round, whether he got his nose broken, he's clearly breathing out of his mouth. I think his ribs were really affected in that first round. He got his ribs beaten up really, really bad. But it was just from a pure motivational standpoint to see somebody who has nothing left in the tank purely will himself into these short bursts of this. He could end this fight right now. There's nothing better than watching in that fourth round where he's just getting busted up, where he literally just turns and looks at him and yells "F you" as he uncorks just this overhand on Paulo.
It's incredible. I mean, it was an amazing effort. UFC President Dana White afterwards was kind of summing it up as I was talking to him. He was saying, normal people like us, fortunately, will never know what that feels like. I mean, that is superhuman type stuff. We talked about the psychological, the physical side of this. That, to me, again, is one of the reasons I love the sport so much, because a normal person does not react in that fashion. But these athletes are to me, man, they're next level. And the fact that, as you said, done. Nothing left in the tank, man. It's easy to just kind of to lay down and tap out but no, I refuse. I'm not going away. I'm going to keep trying. I'm going to keep pushing. I'm going to keep yelling "F you" at you. You know what I mean? It's incredible to see, man. And it was a great effort. And look, let's not take away from Paulo Costa either. Right. Paulo Costa had back-to-back losses. He had a weird situation where he missed weight, and there were a lot of question marks around him. He needed to come in and have a good performance, and he did. And now he looks like he's right back in title contention again. Don't think he'll have it next, but at least now you've got to start having that discussion with him again, where after the last two setbacks, he was well out of that. So phenomenal performance from Paulo Costa. But if it is the last fight for Luke Rockhold, which looks like it will be, I mean, what a way to go out, man. Yes, in defeat, but showing your heart, showing your character, showing your grit to the very end. Fun stuff.
Well, that brings up a good point, because that's what I was about to ask you next. We already know what's next, or presumably what is next for Leon Edwards and Kamaru Usman, but what is next for Costa, right? So coming off of, two high-profile losses to arguably, to the champion, then arguably the number one contender, who then has lost to Adesanya twice in Vettori. I think the only logical thing is, let's see what happens with Robert Whittaker and Vettori next week, and then maybe the winner of that is Paulo Costa. Where does he go from here? He's in this weird purgatory zone right now, especially he needs to renegotiate his contract as well.
It sounds like, which this is a weird thing, and I will say this is a weird part about it. This is something you don't see in other sports, is afterwards Paulo was like, I think I have one fight left on my deal. I'm not sure. Maybe I do. Maybe that was my last one. Like, that was a little bit bizarre. Like, in every other sport, you know exactly how many seasons are on your deal and what's coming up and when you're going into free agency. So he may be in free agency. I think he'd like to come back. I mean, the UFC's going to his home country, Brazil, in January, and he was like, I was thinking maybe November or December, but the opportunity to fight in Rio de Janeiro could be pretty cool. So there's a lot going on, but you're right. He's got to work out his contract situation first. But then after that, I mean, listen, there are names that are up there that, you know, you could potentially match up with. You know, you've got obviously Israel Adesanya and Alex Pereira. They've got a big title fight coming up. As you said, you know, Whitaker and Vettori have a big main event as well. Or excuse me, co-main event. I mean, maybe the winner of that, you know, maybe that person's fighting for the title next. So, you know, he's probably a tier 2 below that. You know, you got Jared Cannonier and Sean Strickland coming up. That's a big fight. Maybe the winner of that. You got Derek Brunson and Jack Hermanson coming up. Maybe the winner of that. So there's a lot of fights at 185 right now, that middleweight division. There's a lot going on. So I think, honestly, it works out just fine that he doesn't really, you know what his contract situation is and may need some time to negotiate, because I think all the potential opponents for him are kind of matched up right now. Right. But the key thing is now you're talking about he could face the winner of some of those matchups. Whereas before, you know, he'd kind of been sliding down a little bit and he was well out of the picture. I don't think he's in, you know, championship discussions, but I do think he's in, you know, hey, listen, these elite fighters in the division, let's talk about who wins and let's talk about who matches up. So this was a big result for Paulo Costa.
Well, and I think just looking at it from a ranking standpoint, like, in my opinion, he's not the sixth ranked guy in this division. Like, let's just be honest. I think he had 2 setbacks against the number 1 and number 2 guys. You know, he looked horrible in that Adesanya fight. Let's just be honest. He didn't look like the motivated in the Vettori fight. But from a fan perspective, now we got to see the old Paulo Costa. I mean, when this guy was just running through people, just wrecking, walking down Yoel Romero. That's the guy I saw on Saturday night against Luke Rockhold. He was walking down, throwing those with hellacious kicks and punches coming at him. He's still walking them down, smiling him, just, you know, kind of laughing off the shots, which I think is just great to see that guy, whether it's he's remotivated or it's just the matchmaking was perfect. Who knows why that real reason was, but it's great to have that guy back.
I know it is, because on the way up, on his rise up before these last 2 losses, he looked like a dude that was, you know, definitely going to be a problem in the division for a long time. And I don't know if maybe he just started to take things for granted or what the case was, but these last 2 results were definitely, you know, took the shine off him, and now it's back. And as you said, it was crazy. The setup that we had in Salt Lake City, it felt like press row was even closer to the octagon than it normally is. So on those instances where they were on our side of the cage and you could see Paulo Costa, you know, 5-6 feet in front of you, walking forward, you know, with that I mean, he is a scary dude. When that man is on point, he is scary. So
when he rehydrates, he rehydrates.
He is insane. So it's good to see that back, because that dude's going to be a force in the division for sure.
All right, we're getting set to wrap up, but I have to touch on next week, UFC Fight Night coming up from France, Cyril Gane versus Tuivasa. You know, what can we look forward to in that fight? I mean, it looks like you know, from Cyril Gane, he's got multiple ways to win. Tuivasa, obviously, you know, the regular fan wants to see a knockout and get a shoey, but what can we expect out of a fight like that?
Listen, first of all, it's a historic night. It's the UFC's first event in Paris. You know, mixed martial arts just legalized not too long ago in France. It was one of the last countries on the planet that didn't regulate mixed martial arts. So it's a big moment for the UFC. They worked a long time to get there, so they're excited about that. But as far as the main event matchup itself, I mean, you're right. That's what it boils down to. Is Tai Tuivasa is one of these special fighters that just has one-shot knockout power, can stop anybody in the division. He may not be the more well-rounded martial artist. That's certainly going to go to Cyril Gane. Gane is a lot quicker. He's a lot lighter on his feet. You know, he's got more options available to him.
What
he's a little bit more technical.
What heavyweight pulls leg locks?
None. You know what I mean? And this guy can do a little bit of everything. So Cyril Gane, by far, the more well-rounded fighter. But Tai Tuivasa has that one-shot power. He's one of those guys that, you know, like a Derek Lewis maybe, or like a Mark Hunt that just can end a fight with one shot, and that's what Tai Tuivasa has. And you know, he's got charisma and he's a character as well, and people just love him. Yeah, the shoey, pouring the beer in the shoe and drinking it. I mean, it's fun. So it's going to be a fun fight, and it's a meaningful fight. It's a meaningful fight in the division too. So it's a historic card. It's a meaningful matchup, and it's a fun matchup. So again, I'd kind of lean towards Gane just because I do feel, as you said, you nailed it. He's got more ways to win. But Tai, if he touches that chin, the night's over. It's that easy.
Yeah. So wrapping things up here on our preview show of Cageside with John Morgan. Again, my name's Eric McMahon. But before we let you go, John, what do you got going on this coming week? Where can we
I'm excited. Yeah, no, this weekend I'll be in Philadelphia. I'm heading out on Thursday. We got a back-to-back night of CFFC at the 2300 Arena on UFC Fight Pass. So UFC Fight Pass, the UFC's online streaming service, and they've got, you know, action every week from around the world, and this week it's CFFC. So we'll do mixed martial arts on Friday night, and then grappling on Saturday. So back-to-back nights on UFC Fight Pass. So I'll be in the booth there with Dean Thomas, as you mentioned earlier. CM Punk, usually my broadcast partner, but he's got some work to do with AEW. So
man, Moxley don't want that smoke. Moxley don't want that smoke.
I love it. Punk is back, man. He had some injuries that he had to deal with, but he's back. So it's always fun to see my broadcast partner out there doing work in AEW.
That's amazing. Best wrestling comeback I've ever seen from a fan perspective. But unfortunately, I did get asked to ref that CFFC, Friday and Saturday night. But as I mentioned to you off air, I'm heading to Austin, Texas to get my last ABC licensed MMA ref. That's something I failed to mention in my intro, is I ref MMA fights now. That's how I originally met you.
That's right.
But I'll be doing that. But best of luck this week. CFFC, literally, best regional promotion, hands down out there. And how they've acquired some of the other organizations, brought their talent pool in is awesome. I know their co-owner Nick Harmeyer very well. Their couple matchmakers very well. And it's always a pleasure when I'm in the cage. I can hear your projecting voice commentating as I'm in the cage repping these matches. Even though you're critiquing me sometimes, I can still hear it. The ref shouldn't have stopped that fight. I can hear all that. Just to let you know.
We got to keep it real, right? We're there to commentate a fight, man. We got to say what we see.
Well, that's awesome. For John Morgan, I'm Eric McMahon. Catch us next week here on Cageside with John Morgan.